Peter Bunce was a longtime member of Salesmastery and instrumental in the success of this club. Sadly, he passed away at the age of 53. Our next speaker will attempt to illustrate just how important this man was to our club and to him. Please welcome Matt.
Peter Bunce, DTM, Distinguished Toastmaster. He liked to refer to himself as DTM, Definite Troublemaker. But I'll always remember him as DTM, Dedicated Teacher and Mentor. Let's take each one of those one at a time. Let's start with dedication. Peter was one of the most dedicated Toastmasters I've ever known. He sat in this chair right here every single meeting. Every meeting. He was in this club for 20 years, and I'm almost certain he had a near perfect attendance. Every single meeting. Now, mind you, that was while he was in about 4 or 5 other clubs at the same time. Okay? This guy started clubs. He kept clubs afloat. He nursed ailing clubs back to health. He was the most dedicated Toastmaster I've ever seen. And whatever you put into this organization, you get back tenfold. So Peter amassed this incredible collection of awards and accolades. Now I mentioned he was a DTM, but he was a DTM twice. You know how hard it is the first time? He was twice and almost a third time. Okay? Competent Communicator Award, what Leanne got here tonight? Yeah, he got 53 of those that I know of. That's 10 speeches. Pretty awesome, huh? Peter once gave a speech entitled, "Too Many Awards to Fit in a Single Drawer." Peter came up here with a stack of awards and certificates, and he would go through them. He'd say, oh, another Competent Communicator Award, 1997, and he would throw it behind him. Outstanding Area Governor of the Year, 1994, and throw it behind him. Humility was not always Peter's strong suit, okay? But here's the thing, he was proud of his accomplishments, as well he should have been. This guy was a recruiting machine for this district. Almost every year, he would win the most members recruited. Most people signed up. He was in like 4 or 5 clubs, so this guy was just bringing them in, and he loved to do that. And one of his famous quotes was, "Hey Peter, how many people did you bring into the district this year?" "Not enough." "Not enough, Matthew." Dedication for you. Let's talk about Peter Bunce, the teacher, because that's what he did, right? That was his trade. Peter was a teacher. He went to Japan for 8 years. He taught English, German to Japanese students. He knew many different languages. He loved to teach, okay? Peter was always teaching. And you can take the teacher out of the classroom, but you can't take the classroom out of the teacher. So in Peter's Toastmasters clubs, which he was mostly keeping afloat, carrying them on his back, he became the teacher. And oftentimes, he would interrupt the class or our club for a teaching lesson. If things weren't going according to protocol, or if someone wasn't doing something just right, he would, point of interest, and he'd come up here. And honestly, this kind of rubbed some people the wrong way. They thought it was a little bit brash. They thought it was a little bit abrasive. Not me. No. Because I knew that if Peter was interrupting, he was interrupting for good reason, and because he was passionate in what he thought it was important to give us that teaching lesson. But he wasn't all business, okay? Definite troublemaker. He liked to have fun too, this guy. As serious as he was at times. I remember one evaluation that this guy gave, and it was hilarious, very theatrical. It was for one of our beloved members, Ronnie, that most of you know. And Ronnie was a sensational speaker. She gave a great speech, and Peter came up here with his notes, and he collapsed to the floor. And he lay down on the floor, and he said, "Ronnie, your speech really knocked me out." And he went on, and he gave the rest of his evaluation from the floor. And when he wanted to transition to a new point, he would roll over to the other side of the stage. And Ronnie, let me talk about a few areas that you could improve. And Ronnie, in conclusion, that speech just knocked me off my feet. See, Peter was trying to teach us that this thing doesn't have to be so formal. We got a lot of pomp and circumstance in here, but it can be unorthodox, and it should be fun. You should be having fun when you're up here on stage. And that's what Peter did. He had fun in Toastmasters, and he never turned down an opportunity to teach. Whenever the district asked him to give an officer's training, judge's training, or a new member orientation, it didn't matter what it was, Peter took that opportunity, and he loved it. Absolutely loved it. He was a damn good teacher, Peter Bunce. He was an incredible mentor. Incredible mentor. He's my first mentor in Toastmasters. And I remember the very first email that I sent to him. I actually reread it. I have it, February 2010. And I sent it to him, and within 12 hours, he responded to me with a very thoughtful and meaningful response. I had written a really long email. I was in a really tough point in my life. And it was so meaningful and thoughtful. It wasn't a form letter. Okay, for a guy who recruits as many people as he did, he could have wrote me a form letter. No, it was very thoughtful. And that's just how Peter was. If you sent him an email asking him a question about Toastmasters, he would send you back a dissertation on the subject, 2 to 3 pages worth of information, because he cared so much. And if you showed interest, he would show that much interest back. He was mentoring a kid named Jordan Bickelman, who was in one of his other clubs. And one time Peter wrote him an email, and Jordan was a young kid. He wanted to be an artist and an animator. And Peter CC'd me on an email with him. "Dear Jordan, I took the liberty of making a list of all the audio-visual companies and all the art and animation studios in the San Fernando Valley area and the greater Los Angeles area. I thought this might help you in your job search. And I've CC'd a good friend of mine and a fellow Toastmaster, Matthew Sherwood. I thought you guys might get along and talk shop. Yours fondly, Peter Bunce." He consistently went out of his way to help people and to mentor people. It's what type of person that he was. Always an incredible mentor. We would go to a dinner sometimes after the club meetings, right? He and I would go to Fuddruckers, have a burger, have a little mentor session, he and I. And I'd ask him questions. Like, "Hey Peter, how do you give a persuasive speech?" And he would go, "Matthew, I met Georgia when I was 6 years old, and she was the most beautiful girl I ever saw in my life. She looked like a Georgia peach." And I'm like, I would get frustrated because he would tell these long-winded stories that had nothing to do with what I had asked about. And at the end of this story, I'd be like, "Okay, Peter, so hey, real quick, hey, about that persuasive speech thing." And he'd say, "Matthew, keep the main thing the main thing." Okay, all right. And so I'd go home that night and I'd be like frustrated. What is this guy on? I don't get it. But then I'd be lying in bed that night and I would think about the story he told me. The main thing, and it would all make sense. You see, Peter, he was operating on a different level than most of us because this guy was highly intelligent. He was extremely bright. He graduated high school early at the age of 17, got his first degree at 19. Okay? This guy was like an encyclopedia of quotes and knowledge. He said to me one time, Matthew, I think I could write the book on Toastmasters and how to become a great Toastmaster. But I don't know who would buy it. Oh, I would, Peter. A lot of people didn't really understand Peter Bunce because he was very eccentric and he was very intelligent, but if you took the time to get to know him, you'd be able to understand him and realize that he could be the most awesome mentor you could ever want. Peter moved to China 2 years ago, and he gave me this gavel. He wanted me to have it. And he said, there's a certain way to use this thing, okay? He taught me the proper way to use it. Most people think, it's a gavel, right? Order, all right, bang, 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 bang. That's not how you do it. There's a way. That's sloppy, right? It's not very dignified. There's one vigorous strike of the gavel, and that gets the assembly's attention. In boxing, when a legend in the community passes away, they do a standing 10 count, and the audience reflects and has a moment of silence while they ring the bell 10 times. So tonight, one strike of the gavel and a moment of silence for Peter Bunce, dedicated mentor and teacher. Madam Toastmaster.
What a tribute to an awesome man.